And we're live. Ta-da. It's the magic of internet. Oh,
Yeah,
I heard something.
yeah, it was
Did you?
yesterday's show.
It was yesterday's show. No, we're doing it today. It's the magic of see that one's today. I heard something.
See, now I'm there. Finally came up.
There you go. It's the magic of see that one's today. Well, look at that. We're like all these echoes and shit.
Oh, I hear it.
Good times. Echo,
All
echo,
right.
echo. All right, you ready?
Yeah. See,
All
I got
right.
my hairs clipped.
All right, let's go ahead and start the show.
Yeah.
Oh my! Let's go ahead and do it. My hips hurt. All right, ready?
Shut up and sit down.
Boom. I wonder how many people in today's world. See, I wouldn't have asked this like 10 years ago, but I wonder how many people hear that and get like offended by it.
Triggered.
Yeah, like there's got to be at least a couple of them, which it is what it is, I guess. But
Only somebody that used to watch us.
yeah, it's just not something I would have thought about like 10 years ago. But for some reason, in
Whatever.
today's world, it's like really. Anyways, alas, I digress. Welcome
Right.
to us. This is Dope and Dharma. This is, of course, the Dharma Time Hour. If you're listening to this live on a Tuesday, if you're listening to this not live, it's still Dharma Time.
Yeah.
So, and he is the one and only
Rich
Dope
is on
Doctor,
it.
and I, of course, am the Dharma guy.
Right
And what
now.
was that? We already have a comment. What did it say? Stop the presses. Are we talking about religion or faith? Big difference. Oh, interesting.
I
Well,
love
don't you
it.
have to have faith in order to have religion? Isn't that kind of like a prerequisite there? Anyways, as Richard just let the cat out of the bag, we were talking about religion today. But before we get to our actual topic, let me say how Richard was able to comment.
Right. Right.
As always, if you want to watch us live and you want to comment and participate in the discussion, you can go to YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch and look up Dope and Dharma. Or you can listen live if you only want to listen, or if you want to take us in at your leisure. We're available on all podcast forums under Dope and Dharma. So,
I don't know.
yeah, now that that's out of the way. So, got a text message earlier today, and it was the one and only Dope Doctor. It was like, hey, do you have a topic? And I, of
Yeah.
course, was like, well, yeah, I have like a whole year of topics planned out ahead of
Oh,
time.
I'm sure. Yeah, you're always
But
so organized.
why do you ask now? Like, did you want to circumvent my pre-planned 360 shows? And he was like, well, if it's not too much trouble, what
Right.
about religion?
Right.
And I was like, okay, so I'll scrap all the hard work I put into planning all of our future shows, the script and everything. I said yes.
Yep.
We will do what you want to do, man, because you're more important.
Yep. That's the way it
so
happened. Play by
so
play. That was a great play by play.
thank
So
you,
you're getting
thank
used
you.
to you're getting ready for football season. You're already doing the play by play
Yeah. So, anyways,
because you're an
we're gonna
athlete.
thanks.
That's why.
and for those of you who don't get the reference, a couple shows back on Monday night during a couch live stuff, we're on terrestrial radio where we're on locally on 1680 AM and 100.7 FM.
Uh,
And our producer there, inadvertently, I don't think he intended to, but he kind of insulted our host here by saying that he didn't grasp certain things because he didn't play sports. So
well, that's
that's
no,
our,
that's
our
not how it
reference.
happened. He says he did because he's an athlete. He goes, Trinity, you understand because we're
Yeah.
athletes.
And the inference there was you don't understand because
Yeah.
you didn't
Right.
play. So, anyways,
Right. Right.
either way, that's where the haha comes from. But yeah, let's talk about religion, man. My favorite topic. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
So religion's a funny thing to me, right. Like, so I was full disclosure, let me just get my own personal history out there so we know where I'm
Mhm.
coming from, at least. My mother is most likely, either if not already watching this, going to tune in at some point. And so
Yep.
I was raised Christian. I was raised in a religious household.
Mhm.
When I say religious, I use that term loosely, meaning there wasn't like a bunch of crosses all around the house, and we weren't going to like Sunday services and Wednesday Bible school. Like we weren't that. religious household. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but when I say religious, I want to make sure I define in what context I'm talking. Meaning, my mom would bring it up occasionally. She talked about it. She believes in God the Creator. She believes in heaven and hell. We would go to church on occasion, not religiously, no, but we would not go on an every week basis. Like, it was occasion. Um, I remember as a kid just being bored out of my mind, sitting and listening to some guy talk about stuff that didn't really pertain to me at that age. Occasionally, she would put me in some sort of a youth group type situation, like where they would do some sort of an activity. I may or may not have gone to Sunday school. I don't remember. Um, and then, as time progressed, I started kind of getting in my rebellious phase. Certain questions I had were not being answered from a religious context. And I remember I was just being very defiant. And then I went to our pastor at the time, and he had like a one-on-one conversation with me. And I don't know. In my past time, I wanted to blame him, but as I've gotten older, I'm not sure if it's fair to blame him. I think I was just looking for a reason. But we had a conversation, and I remember he said some things that kind of just turned me off from religion. Like, I want to say I was on the fence, but I don't know. Looking back, maybe I really wasn't as much on the fence as I thought I was. But he basically, I told him that I needed proof. Faith wasn't enough for me. I needed like actual, like, if God appeared right before me and says like, "Hey, I'm real," then I would have been the most devout follower. But this idea of faith, just I had a hard time with. And the way he chose to respond to that, I don't feel was skillful. He said basically, "No, you wouldn't." He told me that, even if he came down in front of you and said he's here and he's real, you wouldn't follow anyways. And I was like, well, screw you, dude. Like, first of all, you don't know me like that. Second of all, like, what? Like, how would I not? Like, it just seemed like logic sense of if a weird manifestation just appeared in front of you, how would you not believe that? But either way, it rubbed me the wrong way. And so I turned kind of away from religion at that point in my life. And I associated spirituality with religion. I didn't separate the two at that time in my life. So anything celestial, anything bigger than myself, I was very against. I held this weird little grudge until finally, at one point in my life, I was able to actually utter the words, "Hey, I'm atheist." I remember that was like a big deal for me for some reason, because it felt like if I thought it wasn't real, but the second I verbally said it to somebody, it became real. And I was still quote unquote trained my whole life to think it was real. So to say it verbally was like a big deal for me. But um, atheist, atheist wasn't enough for me when I was in my like early 20s. I was actually anti-theist, meaning I actively hated religion and would kind of I would relish in the idea of getting into fights and debates with people about it. Mainly because I personally, and I'm not going to blame all religious people for this, but I personally got into a lot of situations where I was being very harshly judged by a lot of religious people, mainly because of my behavior and my like tattoos and stuff. I've literally been told I'm going to hell and I'm desecrating my body and the body's a temple. Like, I've heard them all, dozens and a lot. Um, and so that rubbed me the wrong way. I felt very judged. I felt very let down. Obviously, now looking back, that wasn't the religion. That was individuals within the religion. But at the time, I definitely equated the two as equal. But as I've gotten older, I did find some spirituality. I found Buddhism, of course, hence Dharma Time, the Dharma guy. And as I evolved in that and became wiser, I no longer have the same harshness to a religion. I think religion itself is really not the problem. I think there's individuals within all religions or all philosophies that can kind of sour the well, if you will. But anyway, so that's where I come from religion. So as we get into this discussion about what it is and what it isn't, things of that nature, you kind of know a little bit about where my perspective comes from. Would you like to give your own interpretation, or you just want to jump in it?
No, mine's very different. Obviously, I was raised Catholic. I'm assuming you were raised, is that Baptist or what was that?
No, the only name I ever remember was we went to a Methodist church one time.
Okay. All
I
right.
don't even know what that is. I
Yeah.
was just told Christian, and because we weren't loyal to like Methodist, because we've been to
No.
multiple different ones,
All right.
so I don't really
All right.
know.
Yeah, well, I was raised Catholic, like many Latinos, is Catholic,
Sure.
did all the Catholic things.
Were you in that Suerta thing though? The other one, or the witches or something? The Puerto Rican thing. I don't remember what it's called.
Santeria?
Yeah, there you go.
I'm not neither going to confirm or deny that there's family members that may practice
There you
that
go.
stuff, because apparently that's maybe too real. So I'm not doing it. I hedge my bets, Trinity. I don't
Sure.
look. My issues were different. There were some certain things that I didn't like about people. It had nothing to do with people and religion.
Right.
It's just that that just happened to be one of the places that I went to where there were authority figures. I was even
Sure.
an altar boy for a year, or at least a time period, and I got kicked out because I was making faces and just I was acting
Shame.
out what the priest was saying, and I guess that was not allowed, and got kicked out of that. So that probably bothered me. And then I went to a Catholic school for 6 weeks because I was getting in too much trouble in regular school. So I made a deal with my mom and that I'd get a pool table if I went to Catholic school. So I did. And that was sixth grade, and not sixth grade. Sixth grade. And I lasted 6 weeks. I got kicked out of there for fighting. Well, I got in trouble for fighting. I got in trouble for supposedly stealing, which I didn't do, but got accused of it. So then I went on the weekend with my friend. We rode our motorcycles to the school, broke the windows, threw rocks through the windows, and then on Monday, the main guy was a priest, and the nuns put me aside and told me they can get my fingerprints off the rock, and that I should confess. And I believed them. I didn't know that you can't get fingerprints off a rock. I believed them. I didn't confess because I thought God was going to strike me down. I confessed because I really thought that they were going to take the fingerprints off the rock. So I did admit it. And then, my father came and bailed me out and says, you know what, we're out of here, and got me out of that school. So it lasted 6 weeks. So that was my experience with that. So I didn't stop going or turn my back on the God that I was raised with for any particular reason, other than certain people died in my life that I didn't understand. I was a little kid. I just didn't understand it. They didn't do anything wrong to me. Priests didn't do anything wrong to me. Nuns didn't do anything wrong. It's not that I asked any questions that couldn't be answered, because to be honest with you, I don't think any adult answered any questions that could be answered that I asked.
Right.
I think most questions that a child asks are you get these stories, and you get their reasons, and you get all these little things, but you don't really get answers until you kind of grow up and deal with it, because you're not going to accept the answers they give you anyway. They give you an answer, but as a kid, you don't perceive it the same way. It's not
Right.
the answer you were looking for, right? So I had a problem with all authority figures, and church just happened to be another authority. And so I started doing bad things. And when you start doing bad things and you think that there's this deity out there that's looking down on you and can see everything you do and it's all knowing, that bothered me. I didn't like that. I didn't like that feeling that I'd be alone in my room and this eyeball is watching me. So I just had to make it untrue. It can't be true. So then I tested. I did what I thought every kid did. I thought every kid did this. Can you make the shutters move? If you're real, make the shutters move. If you're real,
Yeah.
turn the
Yeah, I've
lights
done
on
that.
and off. And obviously none of that stuff happened. So that's how I based that was my science. That was the science that I dealt with. They could have all these stories of how the Bible was
It was
written
very
and how
precise, by the
it
way.
was written over there. Oh yeah, I trusted my science because the damn shutters didn't move. So
Sure.
so from that point forward, I was like, well, that's a lot better, because I didn't want it to be real anyway. Because if it was real, then I would have to deal with being watched. And then my dad was always gone, military, and I was always like hoping him to be home, and he never came home, except months later. It's not like never come home like your dad never came home. My dad actually came home, uh, so I could see why you don't like God, but my dad did come home, so you think I'd love God, but it's those kinds of things that led me
Right.
away. And then as you do criminal stuff, you don't want to believe that you can't answer to it. The only reason that I stayed at least respectful to it, though, is because other criminals, the criminals that I looked up to, were all Catholic as well. And as long as you went as long as you went and you say what you did, and you get a couple of Hail Marys and Our Fathers, and you're forgiven. So luckily, I was part of a religion that was, I guess, within the criminal element that I played in. So it was fine. It's Catholicism. Sure. It was fine. So I don't have the same anti thing, but I did have a problem with the kind that maybe you talk about. the people that said I needed to be saved, the people that
Right.
judged me. I was judged at I did a Jewish play one time, and they got really upset that I wasn't a Jewish person playing a Jewish character on
Wow.
the. I took offense to that. Um, I took offense to different types of religions that said different things. But to be honest with you, in my adult life, I've been more offended by non-religious people than religious people, and not because they're saying anything about me in particular beliefs that I have, but I think people that are really there's a lot of people with a lot of issues with religion, for whatever reason.
Oh yeah.
Like you mentioned yours, I mentioned mine. Everybody's got their story of,
Yep.
of how they were raised. And some people just never healed from their story. They've never matured out of it. They've never grown out of it. They've never evolved. So they got this little anger that they got at 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 years old, whatever. And they're still running around like hating on religious people and
Yeah.
only recognizing when a religious person says something to them, and never recognizing when just an everyday citizen does something to them.
Right.
And I think that to me is what offends me. It offends me that people are so hateful towards people of any belief system, uh, because I do, as an older man, I do believe in order, and even in the criminal entity that I was involved in, there was law and order. I've never not belonged to something that was orderly and had rules and regulations, and you had to do certain things. So for me, uh, I like that. I like the structure of some sort of leadership, some sort of rule, some sort of guidance, and then you know what happens if you don't follow it. Um, and then obviously, meeting you, and I was already loving Buddhist principles, but as a philosophy, because when I studied Eastern Western humanities, it was the one that probably stuck out the most to me. And this is why I wanted to talk about it today. Was I don't find it contradictory to religion. I find it complementary.
Yeah. It's not.
Um, yeah, I find it very complementary to religion. So if you have religion, that's fine, that's great, that's a certain doctrine, but Buddhism is more of a philosophy because
Yeah.
it doesn't follow a deity. It doesn't. It does. There's no rules to it, but it gives you a different perspective on your thinking and a different perspective on everyday life issues, which I think could be very helpful. So, I just thought by speaking about it in that way, um, I just think it's more helpful to people with everyday issues.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously agree. Uh, yeah, that's a topic of discussion I get a lot. Right. Like, many people when they hear about Buddhism, I get like a wide array of responses. Right.
Mhm.
I used to always say when I would go into when I was doing in facilities teaching spirituality, the second I would introduce myself and talk about what I'm there about, you could kind of like to an extent you can almost physically see the crowd kind of just like go to the corners, and it was always one corner of I've already got my religion and I don't want to hear anything you have to say because you're not going to convert me. And
Right.
then the other half of the room would be like, that's all BS and I don't believe in any of it and I'm fine.
Right. Right.
And so the first the first day was always trying to coax everybody back to the middle of the room. Um, to this group over here, I'd have to make sure that they understood there is no conversion here. Like all the things that I'm talking about already fit very neatly within whatever religion you're already
Hmm.
kind of attached to, right? Like whatever you subscribe to, this
I
is
agree.
this is this accentuates it, right? This is just another tool in the toolbox. This doesn't
Right.
take over anything. That's not to say that there aren't versions of Buddhism that are much more in tune with religion, right? There are certain, like in the Mahayana context, there's many of them out there that have the bowing and shrines and things of that nature. But that's not like that's not a price of initiation there, right? Like you don't have to do that. People who choose to go that path, more than welcome to, but it's not part of the deal here. Um, so I try to explain to them that no, there's nothing contradictory. There's nothing that's going to take away from your current belief system.
Mm.
If anything, it adds to it. And for many of them, it actually does strengthen what you already believe. It just gives you another way to argue what you already believe, if that makes sense. Like if you're thinking one way and you hold this
Right.
idea or this concept to be true, all I'm doing is give you more ammunition to prove that same point,
Right.
as opposed to just
Well,
using the Bible or whatever as context.
well, I think in addition to that, I think what's really helpful for the Buddhist philosophy, at least for me, is that when you think of a deity, it's more like, all right, what can you do? Can you just manage that outside world and answer my prayers and all that stuff? But with the
Yeah.
Buddhist philosophy, it's all right, but what are you going to do about it? What am I going to do about it? You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
that's great. That's great. The miracles, I think they can and will happen. It's hard to say that they don't, because there's too many great stories out there that do.
Sure.
I don't know why. I don't know why that exists. To be honest with you, aliens and God could be the same exact thing to
Sure.
me, and I'm fine with that. I don't think that's a disrespect thing. I think that's a strong possibility. Uh, it's just we use different names for whatever we just witnessed or experienced. But when I think about Buddhism, it's your own personal way to deal with your psychology, right? So I think accepting Buddhism to a religious person would be just as disrespectful as accepting psychology or therapeutic thought, motivational interviewing processes, cognitive behavioral therapy, Rogerian, all these different types of ways that people do therapy. It's no different to me. Buddhism is a type of therapy in my mind. And I could be way off base,
No,
and
I'd
I'm
agree with
sure
that.
that there's probably a Buddhist monk out there that says it is what it is to you,
Yeah.
and that's it. But and they're not going to say whether I'm right or wrong. If they're a true Buddhist, they probably won't say whether I'm right or wrong. But then there's those little wannabes that we have in all faiths and all thoughts, and they're gonna watch this or listen to this, and then they're gonna want to say
Yeah.
all these little words and tell me namaste and namaste back at you, brother.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to offend or disrespect. I'm simply saying that when it comes down to it, it's what are you going to do with the life issue that's in front of you? Are you going to cower down and just shrink away? Are you going to fight it? Are you going to keep doing the same thing, expecting some sort of different result? Are you going to keep knocking your head in the wall? Are you going to sit around and wait for the whole world to change and you're not going to do anything about it? It's everyone else's problem, not yours. Or are you going to understand that pain is a part of life? You're going to experience some things. It's not always going to be comfortable, but it's a choice that you have to make, whether you're going to choose to continue suffering or if you're going to choose to bowl through it and do something about it. And that's why I love doing the show with you.
Yeah, you kind of just hit on the head exactly what drew me to it, if I'm honest with you. I never liked the idea of not being in control. I never
Mm-hmm.
liked the idea of some celestial being kind of, dictating what happens to me. And I'm obviously oversimplifying that, but you get the point.
Right.
I never liked that. I always felt like I was in control of things, because at the end of the day, if I say I want to touch this button, well, then I touch this button. Like I'm
Right.
deciding that,
Right.
and I decided to argue with that person or I put, so, um, for me, that is the thing that drew me to it the most. There was a couple other situations and things that drew me to it. The overall, the, the unfettered acceptance really spoke to me too. Just this, because that's not to say once again that there are individuals within it. I just didn't come
Right.
across them,
Right.
and most religion as a whole wouldn't preach the idea of judgment either.
Mm-hmm.
But my personal experience with a lot of individuals of most religious faiths was not a very kind one. It was not very loving and very accepting. It was very judgmental. It was very damning. It was very like, I'm better than you and you need to do this. I didn't like that. I was very rebellious, and you're not about to tell me I'm wrong. To whereas in the Buddhist philosophy, everything that I read, the people that I interacted with, the people I heard from, who are all like, well respected within that community, were
Mm-hmm.
all just completely accepting. It was
Right.
just like, well, it was just new for me. I didn't understand that. But yes, the biggest draw was the fact that I'm in control of what I'm doing.
Right.
I always joke every time I teach stuff and every time I talk about like the four truths or whatever. I always joke when I get to the third one, and the third one is my favorite one, still to this day. And I don't know if people actually believe me or not, but when I do talk about it, when I'm telling someone, I still get goosebumps talking about the third truth because it's that meaningful to me. And the third truth, of course, is you don't have to suffer. And that is meaning that there is a way, like there is a way to deal with whatever life is given to you in a skillful way that doesn't cause you to like have all this stuff in your head. And nobody ever told me that, like, this idea that, wait a minute, you don't have to do this, was such a novel concept. And for me, it spoke directly to my inner anarchist, right? My inner anti-authority person. That's the way I viewed the third truth was, no matter what life, and I'm gonna call it life. It could be whatever it could be the devil. You put whatever word you want to it.
Right.
But no matter what life threw at me, it could throw pain, it could throw bills, it could throw tragedy, it could throw all the stuff at me. There's nothing I can do about it. But the one thing it can't make me do is suffer. If I'm suffering, that's on me. That means I didn't wrap my head around it skillfully. And so for me, that always excited me because that told me that, like, it's basically my big fu to the universe is what I saw. That it was like, nope, can't make me do that. And it's true because I've had tons of triumphs and tragedies and stuff since then, and I've seen situations in each one of them where when I handled it skillfully, I walked away with my inner peace still intact. And when I handled it unskillfully, those are the times where I walked away and my inner peace was not intact. But I could directly see how my own perceptions and responses and reactions to it are what caused that struggling in my life. I didn't blame the situation. It wasn't the person. It wasn't the whatever happened. It was my interpretation and my relating to whatever happened. And so for me, that was a big deal, man.
Right.
A lot of people I talk to, like, I hear this a lot, man. Mostly with the younger generation. I don't hear it as much with the older generation. Maybe that's just because my circle, I guess. But man, I don't know. Maybe you can relate to it. I can't personally relate to it, but I understand it. So I hear it a lot, and that is, I want to do it on my own. Is what I hear a lot. Like when I start talking about spirituality, I'm like, dude, like, and I try to explain it to him, and like this thing has been around for 3,000 plus years. It's older than Christianity. It was on the other side of the world that we're on right now, and all these years later, and all the millions of people, like, there's got to be something to it. Like there's something there, but they're all like, no, I want to do it myself. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, so just for me, from a logical, because I'm a very analytical person, the idea that I'm going to try to tackle life. And at this point, I've only got like 40 some years of experience. And somehow that 40 some years is worth more than thousands of years before me. Like I can't compute that. And so I'm sure it's a youth thing, the mindset of kind of getting out on your own and spreading your wings. But I just speak like my son, my 20-something-year-old, we had this like exact conversation. And since him, I've had many other ones when they're all around 18, 19, 20. And when I'm talking to him and I'm telling them, like, you really should try to introduce some sort of spirituality, whatever that is to you. If it's religion, it's religion. If it's whatever it is, find something, to use the 12 steps, find something bigger than yourself. Right. And yeah, universally, so many of them are like, yeah, I don't want anything. I want to do it on my own. I want to figure it out. It's like, wow. Can you relate to that? I can't.
No, because to me, that's a insecurity breeds that, right? And that's a type of insecurity to a person having to figure something out on their own. To me, it's very sad that you have to think that way,
Right.
because you've done nothing on your own. There's absolutely zero.
Exactly.
I don't believe in the sense of self. I believe there's a sense
You
of
didn't
duty.
even birth yourself on your own.
There's nothing you've done on your own. You make little micro decisions, but the size of that decision, it still has a lot to do with every little thing that has nothing to do with you. So even like when you said push the button, right? Like you made yourself push the button, but you have no. If you're paralyzed, I don't care how much you want to push that button. You're not pushing that button. So if other parts of your body are not working due to something outside of your control, you can't control that and you can't change that. And so there's a lot of things like that exist in the world that we just don't give credit to, because all we want to give credit to is the fact that I'm the one that pushed the button. And you're lacking all the respect, everything else around you that even put you in that situation, that put you there on that day, that allowed you to even be there at that moment, and to do that. And to me, that's what, like you and I both like the show Alone. And one of the things that I like about the show Alone is that it reminds me of how to respect nature. It reminds me to thank the world that you live in. I don't, it's unfortunate that only survivalists talk like that. Right. They kill an animal to eat it. And they all do it. Right. Every single one of them do that. That's the one universal thing you see on that show. Every single one of them, when they kill something, they say, thank you very much to something. They'll say, thank you to something, to the animal, to nature, to whatever. And I think we miss that. I think we don't have that. And I think that's what's missing. I know there's people of certain faith or certain thought patterns or certain philosophies or certain religions that are going to say, well, what's missing is this specific thing. And I'm going to say maybe, but in a broader sense, you're all right. What's missing is a sense of gratitude towards what came before you, what exists around you at the moment, and that you have a purpose for what's coming after you. You're simply a link in the chain. Now, one thing that we have to mention, because I think it wouldn't be right. We in in the United States of America, we attack Christianity because this is a Christian type society. So to many people, they feel like that's the oppressor.
Yeah.
But Christianity was the oppressor to Catholics in just one generation ago. Catholics were the minority. Catholics were the evil people. They were the bad people. The Irish Catholics, the Italian Catholics, the Spanish Catholics, all of those that came, last generation ago. And then in other countries, even Buddhism is the oppressive
Dude,
religion. So
I got a
there is
story on
part of
that
the
one.
world that actually, as much as we may be praising Buddhism right now, it's actually a very oppressive religion to some people.
I literally have the story on that one. So, um, uh, once again, I've already kind of told my experiences and my thought process on the Christian religion for me growing up, and so I viewed it as a very oppressive, very judgmental, very harsh, very whatever thing. And then I came across Buddhism, and I was just like, "Holy cow, man!" Like the Dalai Lama and the way they speak and the tolerant acceptance. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing!" And then I dove, headfirst into it, and I mean, I went off the deep end, man. I read like I don't know, way too many books. I watched I joke, but it's kind of not really a joke. There was a documentary out there. It's like an 8-hour documentary. I watched it. Like I went way too far, but I was just so like enthralled with it. Like I was so like just mesmerized, and I love this idea that they're putting across, and everything I learned was just better than the last thing I learned. So long story short, I was in the gym one day, and I have Asian tattoos, which I will not say what they mean on this show, but for anybody who reads kanji, they know what it says. And it's not, depending on how you interpret it, it's not the nicest thing. I was coming out of the gym, and there was a lady who looked at it. And so she pulled me to the side and she asked me if I knew what it meant. And I was like, yeah. And then she saw some of my other ink and she started talking to me about it. And so we spent a good 10 minutes or something out in front of the gym just conversing. And come to find out, she was trying to witness to me, meaning she was trying to introduce me to the religion of Christianity. Now, the reason why this is unique is because I'm an American standing in an American country where we're mostly Christian, talking to a Chinese woman who's from China. And I was like, okay, so as this conversation developed, I told her, I was like, well, oddly enough, I practice Buddhism. And when she started telling me about her experiences with Buddhism, it literally sounded exactly like my experiences with Christianity. So, from her perspective, in China, Buddhism is used as a very oppressive, very judgmental, very authoritarian type of philosophy. So she literally was saying all the exact same things about Buddhism is that I believed Christianity, and the reverse was true. She was explaining all the positives that I thought of Buddhism as Christianity. That's how she came to know and love Christ, if you will, was the acceptance and the lovingness. And so it was a weird boom moment for me because I was like, what?
Well,
Just and the more I asked around, the more I realized, yeah, like that is a different experience. We're
right.
talking about China, and obviously there's a huge thing right now between China and Tibet, which we won't get into. But um, there are, in most major
Right.
religions or major processes, thoughts, whatever you want to call it, philosophies. Um, there's a yin and the yang, right? For every
Mhm.
person who loves a certain religion or loves a certain thing, there's probably
Right.
somebody on the opposite end of that has a completely different experience. And I think that there
Right.
is something to that for sure.
Well, and what you just mentioned was all about perspective. I mean, what you really love about the Buddhist faith or the philosophy is perspective. That
Yeah.
allows you to have perspective, and it always tells you whatever ill feeling you're having right now, whatever discomfort you're experiencing. Perspective has a lot to do with getting out of it, right? Um,
Very much.
I also want to comment on another thing you said. You had said that the third truth was that you don't have to suffer,
Yeah.
and you said that nobody ever told you that. And I think my interpretation of that is I think I was told that, but I was told that in a way that I wasn't prepared to listen, and I
Right.
didn't hear it the same way. I think what is attractive about the Buddhism philosophy is the communication that I've received from it has been more simple and easier to get.
Right.
I think that all faiths and religions have they're saying that as well. They just say it maybe in a manner that for some reason I don't hear it the same frequency. Like I listen better in a different frequency.
Well, that's not to
But
say
it's
that
not that
there's
they're
not
not saying
scholar.
they're no.
Yeah.
I'm just saying they're saying that you don't have to suffer.
Right.
Because I have very
Sure.
very strong religious friends that's exactly what
Same.
they got from Christianity, is that they
Yeah.
don't have to suffer.
Yeah.
And you got it from the third truth in Buddhism. And then where I got it, I don't know. I know my favorite book, and I don't know where I lost it. But I don't even remember the professor's name. But I want to thank because I always dog on teachers, so I do want to say that professor right there was the most enlightening professor I ever had. And I don't even remember your name anymore. But you taught me Eastern Western humanities, and you were awesome. And when he did that, he literally, that's when I stopped reading. I used to read a lot, and it would frustrate me, and it would make me crazy. And I read way too much of Nietzsche and Jean-Paul Sartre and all these existentialist stuff. But when he started teaching me about the religions of the world, and when I read it, I started studying them, is when I finally felt comfortable, and I said, all of it is true.
Yeah.
All of it is true. None of it is it's not all lie. It's just all a matter of a different perspective of how they put it together in the books. But all these books make people feel so much better about some really horrible stuff that they've experienced, and gives them hope to a very difficult existence. And if it can do that for these people that had an even a more difficult existence to this date, to this moment, then what could it do for me? And so I was encouraged to read more about it. And to me, the central of all those different religions was Buddhism, because the Siddhartha was my favorite of all the books, of all the little books, Siddhartha.
Right.
So it's still my favorite book of all time. And it's a small little one. And just that little journey, it was so relatable, even though none of it you could do in today's society or in my society.
Right.
I could, but I still felt it. The way he went, I felt like, oh yeah, I went to LA, and that was my similarity to that moment. And then,
Right.
oh yeah, I dealt with the authority figures and the legal figures and all that, and that was my identity that moment. Oh yeah, that identification to that moment is drugs and alcohol to me. So I was able to relate it to my life, even though it was so different. And it was all thanks to that professor that just allowed me to hear it and say that the whole world is just full of many different beautiful religions and faith. And I never heard it talk like that. I never heard of someone respect all religions equally the way he did with me. And I think that's why I'm very eclectic in my thinking, and I like them all. I respect them all. I believe in them all. And I've enjoyed my time at a Jewish synagogue. I've enjoyed my time even at the Muslim I did it. I prayed, dude. I sat down, and when they told me what they were praying for, they said they were praying for me to convert to Muslim. I thought that was really cool. I went there with some employees that I had at the time. They were all Muslim. So I've just enjoyed my time, and even the Southern Baptist. I went to a Southern Baptist thing and enjoyed that. Oh yeah, I enjoyed that as well. I mean,
well, I'm kind of on the fence still about Scientology. I'm just going to put that out there, but
I haven't gone to a Scientologist, but I don't think you're allowed unless. Like
no, nothing I've read or heard appeals to me.
But I've been to Clearwater.
But
I've been to Clearwater, and I love John Travolta.
Does
that count?
I don't know. But yeah, no, I agree. So number one, I agree in the sense that the more I've learned about all the different religions, the more I kind of over the years have said they're all basically saying the same thing. It's a little bit different, maybe in dialect or the way they go about it. But at the end of the day, they're all kind of saying the same thing. Don't be a bad person and be kind. Like I don't want to oversimplify it, but
and it's not about you.
Yeah,
they all say let it. They all say let it go.
Yeah,
every single one of them says let it go. Not one of them says, hey, you have to sit and suffer like that for the rest of your life. And they all say get out of yourself. It's not about you.
Yeah, and it's all interpretation, right? Like, because that's the thing is it's not the religion or the philosophy itself; it's the people you're getting it from. And if you're fortunate enough to get it from somebody who's interpreting it the way it was meant to be interpreted, you're probably going to walk away with a good taste in your mouth. Right. But if you're talking to somebody who's using it as a weapon or using it from an egocentric place of trying to get across what they think is right, then you're probably going to have a bad taste in your mouth, right? And that's the one that, so for instance, you said Muslim. had a really good friend of mine, like really good friend. This is the one I told you about before. That was like really anti-white people, for like the better part of his life. I was one of the ones that showed him that no, not all white people are bad. But him and I used to get into some pretty interesting talks, right? Um, the Islamic ones about like Malcolm X and everything else were some probably still to this day, man, like some of the most influential and very interesting discussions I think I've ever had with another human being. Only because it was just so like what, like wow, okay. But we also talked about religion and faith, and so I've been in Buddhism for a long time now, and he's a Muslim. He like converted into Muslim, and at the time it was like after 9/11, and everybody was talking about how they're all about war and jihad and they hate women and all this other stuff, right? And I honestly didn't really know much about it. I didn't know enough about it to dislike it, but I also didn't know enough about it to really have an opinion. So I kind of just remained silent. And so him and I had a conversation one time, and that's when he actually broke it down for me and said that it wasn't this idea that it's this like completely separate religion is really not true. Like they're all part of the Abrahamic religions, meaning when they say Allah, they're actually talking about God. They believe in the prophet Jesus. They just believe that the prophet Muhammad came afterwards or whatever. But the more I talked to him, the more I heard very similar stuff to everything I've heard from Christianity. It was almost the same. Now, once
Yeah.
again, they went about it in sort of different ways, but the overall concept was kind of the same. So I've had a really close friend. We've had hours and hours of dialogue for that. I was raised Christianity. I've dove headfirst into Buddhism over the years, and because of that, I've learned more about Hindu and things of that nature. And the one thing I'm realizing is, yes, I didn't go to college for it, but I've had real world experiences and everything else.
Mhm.
They're all kind of the same, like for the most
Yeah.
part. Like once again, there's different belief systems, there's different
Yeah.
minute differences within them, but overall, I don't see anybody practicing those to a T being a horrible person to anybody.
Right.
Like it's just not going to happen. And so for me, that I'm telling you, man, from somebody who was an anti-theist and hated anything spiritual or religion to where I'm at now, it's like a complete 180. Because now I'm at a point in my life where I don't think personally, and this is just my biased opinion,
Right.
I don't think personally anybody in today's world can live a balanced and healthy life with inner peace without some form of spirituality, whether that might be religion, whatever. I don't think it's possible. I don't think if you're going to run around and do your life and whatever you got to do and work
Right.
and have a family, but if you don't have some sort of higher power type thing in your life, I don't see you getting inner peace. I just don't,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
And
it gives you the strength, man. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I don't know anything. Yeah, I mean, obviously, for the last 30 something years, I've helped whenever I'm communicating. Like if I'm in your Rolodex, if you called me or someone like me, you've gone through some severe pain. You've probably been sexually traumatized, physically traumatized. You put yourself through your own trauma through your drug use or alcohol use. You've suffered and lost a lot. So by the time you communicate with a person like me, um, you've gone through a lot. So in all of that 30 something years, the people that do the best out of it attach themselves typically, if not the faith of origin, which to me is the easiest path forward, your faith of origin, because your 0 to 5 uh, connectivity is still within you. And if you connect back to it, it's very strong and very powerful and very useful. But some sort of faith and belief system that you can look into and for support. Like, why have faith if you're not going to use it in times of anxiety and depression and pain?
Yeah.
I mean, why have any kind of belief system then? You know, what makes you have to depend solely on your way of thinking and you having to figure it out all by yourself? You wouldn't even know if I would tell you there's $1 million in the town of Raton. You just got to get there within 2 days. You probably wouldn't even move if I told you you couldn't ask anybody, you couldn't use a map, you couldn't use any sense of GPS because you want to do it all on your own. But I'll give you $1 million in 2 days if you get it.
Oh, that'd be such a
You
dick
would
thing to do.
you would never you would fail, and therefore you wouldn't even move if you knew you could ask for help and couldn't look it up and you couldn't do any of the things that would tell you where Raton is. You would just sit still because you require more information. You require some information that was gathered prior to you, and you would gather some of you would need some of the failures of others and some of the strong and sacrifices of others, so that you have less of a sacrifice to do right now and today. And I think that's what intelligence is. You got to live smarter instead of harder. You want to live harder, then you try figuring out everything on your own. You go do it. Next time you want to move, don't try to find an apartment. Don't try to find a house. Go out into the woods and just start. First, create your own little machete out of whatever you want to create a machete out of, or make your own little axe and just start building it. Because even in the show Alone, again, I'm going back to Alone because you made me start watching it again. So I'm like on like the second episode or whatever. But even on the show Alone, they take tools with them, at least some. Because to do it without anything 100% is next to impossible with the framework in which we currently exist, because we've already advanced too far to go all the way back to zero.
Yeah, well, like, so I agree 100% with everything you just said. And then I'm going to add to this by saying, so one of the things I ran into a lot also when I was doing the groups, right? And for those of you who don't know who either one of us are, he's a certified addictions professional, and I used to go around to different treatment facilities and talk about health and fitness and spirituality. So when I would do some of those, one of the overwhelming things that a lot of people from varying different age groups and demographics kind of all agreed on, the consensus for a lot of them is they did not want to participate in the 12 steps stuff because of the undertones of God.
Right.
For them personally, they didn't like it for whatever reason, justified or not. That was what was keeping them from fully committing. Right. and as a person who wasn't a believer, like, I understood it. And so that was part of my, that's part of what made it complicated to introduce them to spirituality, because I had to first break down those hurdles or those obstacles that they've already put up before I could even get them to hear anything that I'm saying to them. And so one of the ways I tried to explain it was, and to me it's simple, but it speaks the loudest to me personally. And that is, as a human being, I'm emotional and I can't trust my emotions. Right. And I think we can all relate to that. How many times have we made stupid decisions that just didn't work out and we based it because of emotions, how we felt at the time? I felt that I was right. I felt that this was a good thing to do. I found out later on that was a really bad decision, right? But I based it on what I felt at the time, and I was fully convinced in that. And so the way I treat spirituality or a higher power, or even if you're listening to this and you're a religious individual, I'm assuming you probably agree, the way I treat my spirituality is like my go-to. And what I mean by that is, because my emotions go all over the place depending on the day, right now I'm fine, but something could happen in an hour and I'm not fine anymore. And so my whole thought process is going to be based upon what I just last experienced. Yeah. And so any decision I make from that is going to be based on a very temporary emotion. So it's not going to be my best thought. It's going to be my immediate reactionary thought. So for me, what Buddhism does, or spirituality in general, is at my best when I'm calm, cool, collected, and chilling. I look at that and I agree with it. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. I like that. That's how I want to. So at my best thinking, when I am not upset, when I'm not emotional, I'm not needing for anything, I'm just completely content. I can look at that and say, yeah, sounds good. I like it. So I know that no matter what happens, I agree with that. And I got great news. It's not changing. It's been around for 3,000 years, and it's the exact same stuff that people read 3,000 years ago that I'm reading today. It's not going to change. It doesn't care how I feel. It doesn't care what I went through. It's going to always be what it is. And so I know then, when I'm in an emotional state and I'm wanting to react to something, I'm wanting to respond to something, I'm smart enough now to say, okay, well, before I do that, let me look at this thing that I pointed to at my best and said I agree with. So before I emotionally react to whatever it is, let me see how that stacks up. And if it stacks up well, then good, I'm going to do it. But if it doesn't stack up well, then I pause. I'm like, oh, I see what just happened there. My emotions, okay, I see what you were trying to do. You were trying to get me, your McDonald's trying to get me to buy that McDonald's. That your advertising and marketing was phenomenal, but it didn't work. because I got my special decoder ring over here. I got my spirituality that I know that like I can turn to check. And that right there is what kind of has helped me over the years, because there's been many a situation. I'm still a human being, so I'm still an emotional creature. I still have days where I'm like hyped up or I'm wanting to do whatever. But what keeps me from crossing that line that I don't want to cross is I have this check and balance. I have this thing that I can turn to, like, let me see how that measures up. And so for me, that's what spirituality or religion is. And for those individuals who struggle, who don't like religion or don't want, that's fine. Nobody's asking you to like it, but just find something in your life that's bigger than you, that's going to be like stationary. Find your North Star, if you will, right? And it was funny, not to go off topic, but I was watching a documentary thing last night of, oddly enough, people smuggling people into the country, right? They're smuggling Haitians and things of that nature from, there's a little island right off the coast of Florida. It's like 50 miles, 2 hours. And they have to, they smuggle them at night, and they're bringing them into the country. And when the people are interviewing them, they're like, hey, do you use like, how do you navigate at night? He's like, with my eyes. And she's like, you don't have like GPS, you don't have, lights, or he's like, no, those things get you caught. And he's like, but what I do know is the Big Dipper is right there. And if you put the moon in the middle of the Big Dipper, it'll get you where you need to be. And so for me, that's kind of like what I mean is he doesn't have to have all these GPS, all these things that could let him down or get him caught. So us trying to think our way through stuff, you're basing it on temporary, unreliable data that could change at any given moment. And so you have to find your North Star. And so for this guy, granted, he's doing something illegal, but regardless, he found a very interesting way. He just says, look, those stars have been around for millennia. Like, it's not going anywhere. So I know if I line this up, I don't have to have a light. I don't have to have a GPS. I can just go straight there, drop them off, and come back. And so for me, that I think is what religion and spirituality can be for everybody, is your guiding star, is something that you can turn to when all else is failing you, that will help you get to where you need to be.
And you know what? As much as we have all these stars, and there's been so much written about them, without the shipping lanes that have existed as well, the currents that exist, and you just get in one of those currents and it'll take you as well. See, because you could be looking at that star, but if you're in a backwards current, if you're going against the current, you ain't getting there. But there's currents that push you and pull you. So there's so much magical stuff that exists, even in that difficult ocean. It's just hard to imagine that there's places in that ocean that'll just propel you in a certain direction if you get in it. You know what I mean? It's so complex, Trinity.
Yeah.
That I can see why people would rather just stick to the one of their birth or origin, and I think that's fine. I think that's okay. I think that's where you should start. You should first start by resolving of whatever issue you may have with your faith of origin. Right, resolve that first, because no matter what, if you move forward and you have not resolved that, that may still hinder you from getting all the knowledge that you need in the next chapter. You know what I mean? So please work on resolving that first, or at least during. If you find yourself hating another faith or disliking another faith, then you're not being true to your own. I don't think. I think that I don't think that's possible. I think that in order to be true to your own faith and belief system, you have to respect that of others. Because if you truly believe that it's in God's time, or He's the only one that can judge, well, then why are you judging, and why are you making it your time? It's not about your time. It's about some other time that you're not in control of. I mean, if you don't even control your own, then why do you control mine? Why do you control Trinity's? You don't. So just enjoy your own path, whatever that may be. Enjoy your own journey, and support others that are living on theirs. And we're allowed to be wrong. That's the other thing. Allow people to be wrong. Allow them to if it sounds ridiculous to you, so what? So what? When people knock on my door and they want to tell me about their faith and belief system, I don't get angry with them. I say, thank you. Thank you very much. I'll take your pamphlet. I'll look at it. Thank you very much. I'm not searching today. But that doesn't mean I won't be searching tomorrow. I'm very content with my belief system today, but that doesn't mean I'll be as equally as content tomorrow. Life has a lot of things that it can throw at you, and
Yeah.
I'd rather have a whole armament of possibilities, just like I do weaponry. If this weapon over here doesn't do the trick, I feel very comfortable. I have my standard go-to weapon that I feel will do the trick, but it doesn't mean I don't have others that they may have to be used. And that's how I feel about faiths and religions as well, is that I don't mind learning more about others. It doesn't make me dislike my own belief system more. It doesn't challenge me. It's not negative. I don't think the God of my understanding would have it take issue with me going to temples of worship or places of worship of other faiths and belief systems. I actually enjoy it. And I appreciate everyone who's ever invited me to everyone who's ever prayed for me, everyone that ever sent me a thing. Thank you. I may not go. I may not, always respond to some of the things that you may send or whatever, but I appreciate it. That's fine. You're doing it because you feel compelled, like you have to do it. And should I ever need it differently, you'll hear me respond differently. But however I took it or read it or responded to it was how I needed to at that moment. And I think that's important too. I think you just need to respect all the way around. I think some people get way too angry at others. Like, I know I did. I used to get angry at people when they would say they would say, "Oh, that's the way I used to feel." Oh yeah, not yet. Like as if
Right.
they're on a higher evolution scale than I am.
Yeah.
No, that's your story, and that's great. And if that ends up being mine, then that's great too. But it's not today, and I'm not looking.
Well, and I think relating to that, right? I'll make this my last kind of point because I know we're getting close, but um, I think it's an important reminder. So I'm a member of a couple groups on Facebook for Buddhism and stuff, just for me to kind of stay up to date, I guess, or see different thoughts and stuff. Just I don't know. I joined them a while back, and I've never unjoined them. And I still see stuff that I find relevant sometimes. But in doing so, I also found many posts of people who I don't think represent the philosophy well. And a lot of times those people are very critical of somebody who maybe isn't as far along in the journey as they are,
Right.
or they're very stuck on using like certain terminology. Like they want to boast on how much they know as far as like the proper terminology or the old translations of things. It's a very elitist kind of mindset.
Right.
And so when I hear these people and I see them, my initial reaction and where I'm at now on my journey isn't one of ridicule or criticism. It's just I feel sad because it's like, man, I'm so sorry that you feel still a need to like judge all these other individuals. Like you're not getting the essence of what Buddhism is, right?
Right.
And I say that as a microcosm to the bigger point that I'm making. And the bigger point that I'm making is something that Richard commented earlier, and I said at the top of the show. Stop allowing you know stop allowing one interaction or a very small amount of interactions poison your mindset towards an entire thought system that's been around for way longer than any of
Right.
us have, right? And a very trivial example to that is we've all been to like a restaurant, like a chain restaurant that messed up our order, one time. You never not go back, right? Like I'll use McDonald's because it's the first thing that popped in my head. Most of us at one point or another have been to McDonald's, and if you're a
Right.
fast food connoisseur, then you probably make a habit of going to McDonald's occasionally. And something tells me they probably messed up your order one time. And you don't say, "Well, I'm never going back," because they meant no. You just assume, it happens or whatever. Maybe it was the B shift today. Like who knows? Um, so it's not like that's a foreign concept to us, but for some reason we really like to focus in on one or two really negative experiences,
Right.
and that completely negates thousands of years of history. And I think that's a shame. I think we need to stop doing that collectively.
Yeah.
There is beauty to be had in multiple different religions and faiths and philosophies. You just got to find it, and it's on you. It's on you to
Yeah.
find it. It's not on them to show you. Relying on them to show you is relying on somebody else's interpretation and somebody else's, path. You're on your own path, and it's up to you to find the beauty in those things. And trust me, there is beauty in every single one of them. You just got to find it yourself. But you will never do that if you're so focused on a very small group that have offended you or hurt your feelings, and you think that they are somehow the manifestation of the entire thing. I think you're doing both yourself and the philosophy a very, very big disservice.
Yeah, definitely don't let someone else's belief system nibble at your deepest level of insecurity, because that's all it's doing if it's bothering you. Feel secure in your own thought and where you're going with it. Learn as much as you can. You know, at the end of the day, they're really all philosophies. We may call them religions and faiths, but at the end of the day, they're all types of thought and ways to help us get through this existence. And none of us know the truth, to be honest with you. None of us know
That's why they
the
call it
truth.
faith.
That's right. You know, hopefully we find out. Hopefully I just don't get a redo and I forget all the stuff that I had learned and then bump into Dana later and like not even recognize her. That would really suck. But who knows? I can't remember the previous life if I had one. So what's to say I'll remember the next? But anyway, yeah, man, I'm on my way to Birmingham now. You got to go to Birmingham, Alabama. I'm pretty sure they have some comments on this topic there in Birmingham.
You think?
You know, last time I was there, what I was shocked with is that's where all the German rocket guys are. You know, I mean, all the people that built all the bombs.
Really?
That's where it all started. Apparently, there's this big
I didn't
history
know
there, like the original NASA area, apparently. And so I noticed it because I went into this Publix. And I'm looking around. It's all these people that don't look like they live here. I'm like, this doesn't look anything like what I thought I was coming to. And then somebody later told me, it's like, oh, that's because aerospace this and aerospace that. I'm thinking, oh, these are all engineers. That's why they look like they come from all over the world. Everyone there looked like they came from another country. Every single one in this Publix that I went to. And I was like, this is just very awkward. You know, but I thought about that right now because here we are talking about this and respecting all cultures, all religions, all thought process. And I'm going into a place where I feel like it's got like a lot of undertone of that. So
go walk across the Selma Bridge, man.
Oh yeah, no, man. Yeah, not into that part of it. I just, you know what I mean. I gotta go see. I do my thing. I'm a dancing monkey. I'm gonna go play the dancing monkey for an hour, and then I'll fly back. And then later on this week, got the Pittsburgh game I'm gonna go to in Jacksonville.
Yeah, well, it's preseason. Who cares?
Hey,
what I am excited about is that means that we'll be coming back on air. We'll have a fourth show every week, and it'll be sports, I'm sure. So,
looking
forward to that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna go wave my terrible towel in Jacksonville
right on
this weekend. Anyway, all right, man, good. Yep. I'm done. So
all right. Well, my final thoughts are, you know, well, first and foremost, thank you everybody for tuning in. As always, if you feel you got some value or other people could get some value, by all means, share it, like it, subscribe, that kind of stuff. It does help. You know, we're only as good as the people who hear us. Final thoughts, I guess I would say is don't undervalue spirituality, man, and religion. You know, whatever it is to you, however you define it, don't undervalue something bigger than yourself. You know, we're not islands. We all think we're doing it on our own, but we're not. We're extremely social creatures. We like to be part of something. We like to be part of something bigger than ourselves, and there's really nothing bigger than a whole philosophy or a whole religion. So I would encourage you to work on any of your roadblocks that you have keeping you from them, because that's all they are. It's just roadblocks. Work on whatever those are, and then open yourself up to the possibilities of a philosophy, a spirituality, a religion, whatever that might be. And really give it a shot, and you might be surprised in the kind of peace that'll help you find. And at the end of the day, that's really what we're all looking for. Is we're all looking for that idea that we call happiness or inner peace, or however you define that. The problem is we're all failing miserably, right? And we're all going about it the wrong ways. And so, you know, join the club, fail miserably like the rest of us, but just do it with your own North Star. So, anyways, that's all I got. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Let me enjoy your trip. And that's all we got. So now that you know better, do better. Peace.
Thanks, man.